Well, hey, Christian Challenge students, this is the fourth short devotional that I have for you. We've been doing these all this month through May and here into June, following our Bible reading plan that small groups have been going through. But this morning I want to do something a little bit different. We've been following that plan, but with everything happening in the world right now, I want to address racism and violence. And I was really hesitant to bring this up, hesitant to speak about this, primarily because only a few people see these videos. And I thought, well, it's not going to make that much difference since so few people watch these. And then I thought, who am I to add value to a conversation that's happening across the entire country? I don't have particular unique insight, but I did finally decide to address this topic because I love you guys and I care about you, and I imagine that you are struggling to process what you're seeing in the news, what you're reading in the headlines, just like I am. And I don't have something special to say. I don't have unique insight, but I do believe that Jesus demonstrated some truths that will help us understand how to make sense of life right now. And so I want to read from the Gospels, from the life of Jesus. And I want to start really briefly here with an interaction that Jesus has with a particular woman, a Samaritan woman. It's in John chapter 4. And here's what John chapter 4, verses 7 through 10 say. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Now, after this, in chapter 4, Jesus talks with the Samaritan woman about how her personal life is just in calamity. It's a train wreck. And somehow Jesus tells her all about it, that he knows everything about her life and her struggles. And then she, in turn, highlights the religious conflict between Jews and Samaritans. And then here's picking up in verse 25 and 26. Here's what Jesus and the Samaritan woman have to say to each other. In verse 25, the woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. He'll explain these religious differences. He'll explain how we live a full life." In verse 26, Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, am he." So if you know anything about this passage, about the context of this passage, maybe you already know some of this. It was culturally inappropriate for a Jewish rabbi to speak personally and especially to share a common drinking vessel with a Samaritan woman. It was culturally out of bounds for Jesus to do what he did. So here's the first point that I want you to get. Jesus refused to marginalize the individual. When Jesus interacted with people who were of a different race, a different religion, different politics, both the rich and the desperately poor, everyone that Jesus interacted with, he treated each person as beloved by God, worthy of his care and his love. Even it would have been culturally approved and even expected if Jesus had pushed this person down, if Jesus had pushed the Samaritan woman off to the margins. Instead, he elevated the people that he interacted with because he saw them as inherently valuable, no matter their politics or their religion or their race. The next thing I want to read, if that idea is that Jesus never marginalized the individual, the second idea that I want to read about shows up in Matthew. In Matthew chapter 8, Jesus has an interaction with a man that we call the Centurion. So I'm going to read Matthew 8, verses 5 through 10. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly." Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and that one, 'Come,' and he comes. I say to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and he said to those following him, "Truly, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." Now, the label centurion might not mean anything, or might not mean a lot to us, but if you were in first century Israel, the label centurion was of huge significance. This man was a commander in the occupying Roman army. This Roman army had slaughtered Jewish freedom fighters before Jesus, and they would crush them again after Jesus. So imagine this sight that we're reading about here in the Gospels. You have Jesus standing in a peasant's robe, and then you have the centurion, likely wearing the equipment of war, body armor, carrying a weapon, probably had some indication of his rank. And here's the second point that I would like you to remember. Jesus did not demonize the individual. Instead of seeing this Roman centurion, this military commander, as a symbol for the oppression of Jesus's homeland, Jesus saw the centurion as a man in need and as a man of faith. And that day, Jesus brought the miracle of healing to the centurion's home. So Jesus, in his interaction with people, refused to marginalize. Jesus refused to demonize. When I think about my own heart, and I imagine for all of you as well, it's likely that each and every one of us have tendencies to marginalize groups of people, to demonize groups of people. I think we have a tendency to lean towards those options. It's just a natural part of human sin. But if we take following Jesus seriously, we will need to look inward and call out our own need for transformation. My hope for you, my hope for myself, my hope for our campus, my hope for our nation would be that more and more people would become more and more like Jesus. I believe that our greatest hope for change on an individual level and a community level would be that we would be transformed to become more like Jesus, and that we would be like him in refusing to marginalize and refusing to demonize. It's my prayer for myself, my prayer for you this week.